I think I stopped like a little bit in the middle on Tes Zion Amud Aleph, about about 7 lines down. Actually 5 lines down from the top. Amar Avoda Barahava, Ein Moichel Lahen Asher Sheyos Shel Barzel. We had talked about how you're not allowed to sell weapons to Ovdei Kechavim. He says you can't even sell uh, slugs of metal, of iron. My time, because they're going to use it to make weapons. In that case, you shouldn't be able to even sell them, different types of tools, of gardening tools that can be reshaped into weapons. Amarav Zavid, Parsala Hindua. No, that which we said that you can't sell um, these chunks of iron. It's a specific kind of iron. Hindu is Indian from India, not our Indians over here in the United States, not American Indians, but real Indians from India. So that iron is only used for weapons. So if you sell it to them, you know it's going to be a weapon. But if you sell a rake, even though they can make it into a weapon, they also could use it as a rake. So we sell this metal that comes from India. Why we allow that? Amar Rav Ashi, the parsoi de magnu. You're allowed to sell it to the Persians because the Persians were allies of the of the Bnei Eretz Yisrael, the Bnei Yisrael. They would protect them. So therefore, you're allowed to sell them to help them fight the wars against the surrounding barbarians. So Agolam Misyachim. In the Mishnah, back in the Mishnah in Daf Yudalad, we had said that Malcolm Shenogu, we said, Ein moichrem lahem behema gas. We said the gabi behema daka, small behema, you could sell, it depends on what the minig is, but a behema gasa, a large animal, you're not allowed to sell to an oived kechavim, like we said before, because we're worried that you're going to come to rent to them or to but lend them a behema gasa, a large animal that they'll use for work on Shabbos, and your animals are not allowed to be used for work on Shabbos. So we said this holds true even agolim musyachim, even for calves and young donkeys that are not able to work, because we're worried you'll also do it for larger animals, for grown-up animals. Then we say shlama mushurim. Tanakama says doesn't make a difference if the animal is healthy or even if it has a broken leg, that's not where it's not able to work. Zak the Gemara, and the Mishnah continues, but Rabbi Yehuda matir b'shvura. Rabbi Yehuda argues on the Tanakama. He says if it has a broken leg, so it's an animal that's unable to work, no one's ever going to come to mix that up, and therefore it's mutter to sell that to a guy. The Beseira matir b'sus. The Beseira allows a horse because horses, the only work that they do is carrying people, and a person is chai noises atzvay. So even if someone rents a horse to a guy, it's not going to come to do a malach. He says, like we explained, that a horse you're allowed to sell because even if you come to rent it or lend it, it doesn't do a malacha. It's only used for carrying people. And a human being carries himself. There's no malacha of carrying a human being. Rebbe disagrees with Ben Beseira. He says a horse is also to sell. They based on for two reasons. One is because a horse can be used as a weapon. So he says nothing to do with Shabbos. It's because it's like we said before. You can't sell a weapon. A horse can also be a war horse can be used as a weapon. And one is because of the general issue that we have with the behema gasa of Shabbos, which the Gemara will explain. A horse can kill with its hooves. It can kick. It can be trained to kick. So therefore, you shouldn't sell them to avodas kechavim, just like you can't sell a gun. What's the second reason that it's going to be used for work? We said a horse it only carries people, and Chayno says Atzmai, so there's no Isser Malacha, there's no Deraisa Deke Isser. Rabbi Yochanan L'Shiyazkin, when it gets older, Matchine Berechayim B'Shabbos, we're afraid they're going to use it to run a mill. They used to have the animals trudging in a circle, pushing the mill. So when a horse gets older and it's no longer able to carry people, it might be drafted into use to do a malacha of tchina. Amr of Yochanan, halacha keben beseira. Halacha is like ben beseira, that is sus. We're not chayshish for either of these two things, that it's going to be used as a weapon or that it's going to be used when it gets older. Iboilu, shar shel patem mau. If you have a fattened cow, so a cow, we said, is also to sell to a guy because he might come to rent or lend it to him on Shabbos and it'll be used for malacha and you mechuyev shlisis behemtai, so therefore it's not allowed. What happens? You have a cow that was fattened up to be used to eat. It's a wagyu cow, and nobody would use it to do malacha. It's clearly going to meant to be geshachten, so there's no chashash. No one who sees it will think that you're allowed to rent or lend an animal, a cow like that. Ma. So tomorrow, Tibayel Rabbi Yehuda, Tibayel Rabban. It's kashayla both in Rabbi Yehuda and both in Rabban. Both in Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a broken animal can be used, and also in the Rabbanan who say it can. Tibayel Rabbi Yehuda. Ad kan lekashay Rabbi Yehuda lebeshvura d'liasi l'chalal malacha. Rabbi Yehuda only says a shvura, an animal that has a broken limb, that it can never be used for malacha. But an animal, a fattened cow, it can go on a diet, and someday, if you don't keep feeding it, it will be able to use malacha. So it's not as good of a heter as an animal with a broken limb. That we're assuming broken limbs on animals don't get healed. So maybe that's also. Maybe the Rabbanan that said an animal with a broken limb, the reason why they say it's asur is because just because it has a broken limb doesn't mean it's going to be geschachten. It doesn't have anything indicating that it's for shchita. The only reason you fatten an animal is in order to shecht it. So it's a very strong indicator that that's what the person wants it for. Maybe an animal with a broken limb, even though it can't work, maybe we'll use it for breeding. But an animal that's fattened, you're spending extra money to feed it, it's because you want to eat it. So afilu rabbanan sharu, even the rabbanan who aser by an animal with a broken limb, they'd pater a fattened animal. Tashma adam yidam shmuel shal beis Rebbe hayu makrivin shar shal pitim b'yom idam. In the house of Rebbe, they would send every year a fattened calf on the holidays of the goyim. Now, this is not talking about that it was going to be used for their avodah zara. Obviously, that would be aser. You're not allowed to do anything that would be part of the avodah. It was just a tribute at that time when they were celebrating. They would send them a gift in order that they shouldn't oppress the yidden. First, they gave an extra 40,000 talents of silver or gold that they gave as an extra bribe to say, don't shech this animal on the day of the holiday, but rather do it the next day because we don't want to be part of the avodah zarah. Then they gave them another 40,000. They said, we're giving you this huge amount of money, but we're going to send you the animal. We're already going to shecht it. It will just be meat. It won't be an animal. And they chassid al rivin shein makivin say koleka. Then they gave him another 40,000. They said, let's give you all this money. You're already up to 120,000 bundles of gold or silver that we shouldn't have to send you the cow altogether. My timer. So what is the reason for the middle thing that they say that we won't send it to you live, but rather chassid? Because we're worried that the goyim will hold on to this animal and people will see that you sold an animal and they'll come to think that you could rent or lend to them. So the it's a raya that we are concerned about it even on a fattened cow. This is talking about a fattened cow. Sagt Gemara, my time. We gave, there were three different things that they did, three steps. They also said, we want you to do it the following day, but it's not going to help to do it the following day about the din that you're not, the day after the Eid, after the holiday. That doesn't help as far as the din that you're not allowed to sell a behema gasa to a guy because of the chash of using it on Shabbos. Elarav miyaka milsa boy. Rebbe wanted to get rid of this whole tradition of sending them the fattened cow. He wasn't comfortable that you're giving something to them on their Gayish holidays. V'sava Yaakov asi porta porta. He said, I'm going to get rid of it by taking on a little bit at a time. So it wasn't that he was specifically had an issue with any of these things, that he thought it was going to accomplish anything. It was just a way to get to the ultimate goal of getting rid of this minig altogether. If you have a fattened cow, is it going to be able to, if it loses weight, is it going to be able to do malacha? Ravashi Amali Zavidna Bas Bar Torah Bar Amali Zavidna Bar Tura Mashinan Lay. I'm sorry, Amali Zavidna Tomi Bar Torah Mashinan Lay. When we keep a Tura, a shar, v'avid al chadtrin, it could do twice as much work as a non-fattened cow. That means fattening it is actually beneficial for it. And not only can it do work, it can do twice as much work. So there is such a thing of keeping a cow that's been fattened and using it for work. Zak the Mishnah. You can't sell to Avdei Kechavim bears and lions, or anything that can be damaging to people. That means we don't want Goyim to have in their hands. It's almost like the din of weapons. If they have lions and bears, somehow the Jews are the ones who are going to suffer from it. So Zak the Gemara, Zak the Mishnah, Ein boinen imon basilki. You can't build them a basilica. Basilica is a word that's still in use. You know, all the different cathedrals are called a basilica, I think, in Rome. But over here, in this context, it means a large building that was used, Rashi says, it was used as a courthouse, and it had double use. After they would judge the guy, they would take him to the top of the basilica and throw him off. So you don't build it for them because who's going to the Jews always get the brunt of all these situations. And a gardum is a courthouse. It's stadia. Stadia is like a bullfighting rink, but it wasn't the bullfighting rink like they have in Spain now, where the guy in the cape runs away. It was a bullfighting rink. They would throw the Jew in there and let the bulls chase after them. Ubima, bima is another kind of what do you call it? Like an executioner's platform that they would throw off people to kill them. So all these things that could be used to damage people are also to use to build for a guy. You could build for them bimusiyos, which if you look at Amud Beis and Rashi has a very chiddushtik pshat. On the second Amud Beis, it says the Taisis bimusiyos. It really belongs on Amud Aleph. Pisha could just be mishal evan achas. It's a platform or an altar. Rashi calls it the word altar. It's an altar of one made out of one stone. That they would bring animals for Avos Gechavim, Karlam altar. And this is the reason why Rashi says it's mutter. Bringing an animal is not, allowing the animal to be brought is not actual Avodah Zara. It's just being marked of an animal, then the animal is going to be what's being used as Avodah Zara. But shechting the animal on it is not the Avodah Zara. And Taisus is very bothered by this. I mean, it seems terrible, right? Who can imagine that you're allowed to build a mizbeach, basically, for Avodah Zara? If you're not building anything you're not allowed to do anything to help Avodah Zarah. It's all little lefneivers. It's also for goyim. So Tais has a bunch of kashas from different places. Kasha lo mishtamet kroi lebimus mishamish l'shashisha mishamish l'avos gechav matzma kari bimus. He brings a bunch of rice for it. So therefore, Rashi Taisa says on the bottom, lekach, like 10 lines from the end of the Taisa, lekach niralari gesarach shapir dumiyusois bedalis vu losher merchatsois. It's a kind of merchatz that the Goyim would use. So you could build the musiois who base merchatsois. Those you're allowed to build. But there's a restriction around them. Higila kipa shemamidim ba'avodas kechavim also live nice. They used to have like a little niche. They'd have like a little indentation in the wall. They'd put their little avodah zara, the getchke in it. That part of a merchatz or a demusiyos you're not allowed to build. Amar of Chanan bar Zok the Gemara. Amar of Chanan bar Chizda, Arbila Amar of Chanan bar Rava. Either of Chanan or of Chanan. Amar Rav. They said b'shem Rav. Chaya gasa hareyu k'behema dakala pirchus. A chaya gasa, a large animal, who's a chaya, non-domesticated, not a behema, but a chaya, a large, non-domesticated animal, has the same din as a small behema. Legabe the din pirchus, there's a din that if you have an animal that's about to die and you go and shecht it, it has to have like a spasm that shows that it's still alive after you shecht it. So a behema daka, you need to have a bigger spasm. A behema gasa just needs to move. But a behema daka has to have like a spasm where it kicks its leg back and forth. So we say a chaya has the same din. A large chaya has the same din as a small behema, that it requires that same movement to show that the animal's not yet dead. It wasn't dead when you shechted it. That only has the din chaya gasa, a large wild animal, only has the din of a behema daka, legabe the din of shchita and pirchus, but not legabe mechira, that we say that behema daka, sometimes it's mutter, sometimes it's aser, and the behema gasa is always aser. He says that it's not considered like a behema daka, but rather it's like a behema gasa that's always going to be aser, because we're going to say, just like if a person sees that you could sell a chaya gasa, he's going to come to think you could also rent or lend a behema gasa to a guy. So this is all Rav Chanan or Rav Chanan saying b'shem Rav, but Rav Chanan or Rav Chanan disagree with Rav. I say that even legabi the din of mechira, a chaya gasa, a large wild animal, has the same din as a behema daka, makom shenago limka moichin, shaloi limka ein moichin. It's going to depend on the place, and like we said, he's not worried about the issue of that you're going to sell it. It's going to depend. I guess it's going to be because of a revia. I guess there's some chash of revia also by a chaya gasa. Tanam. So it's a machlokes. It comes out. It's a machlokes between Rav Chanan and Rav. Rav says a chaya gasa is treated like a behema gasa, and Rav says it's treated like a behema gasa, that it's always aser. Rav Chanan says it's like a behema daka, that sometimes it's aser, sometimes it's mut. Tnan. So we ask a kasha from our Mishnah. We say a doiv and a ari, a bear or a lion, are both large animals, large wild animals, and we say the reason why they're aser is because they could damage someone. But they don't say because of the din of that they could be like a behema gasa, that it's you're going to sell it or rent it to a guy on Shabbos. Time this bein as a gram, or less bein as a gram. Sorry. So l'chayra, it's a raya, not like Rav. It's a raya to Rav Chanan. Amar Barula, Bari Shavar. Baliba to Rabbi Yehuda. When we're talking about over Ari, the reason why we're saying it's only because it's could damage, we're talking about an Ari that has a broken leg, so it's not capable of doing work. So therefore, it's now Ari would never really do work. Um,
What could it do?
what first of all, we're going to say later on what kind of work. There's certain types of animals, like a wild donkey can do work. But the point is, if it has a broken leg, we're not chayshish that someone who's going to see that you sold it will say, oh, now I could sell my para, my ox, to a guy, or rent my ox to a guy on Shabbos, because they're going to realize this is a very distinct case. This is an Ari with a broken leg, so it's not going to be, no one's going to make a mistake. I'll leave it to Rabbi Yehuda. And we're going to Rabbi Yehuda. There was a machlokes like we quoted before in the previous Mishnah. That Rabbi Yehuda says an animal with a broken leg you're allowed to sell. Rav Ashi gives a different teretz on this kasha from our Mishnah. Stam Ari Shavaru Eitzel Malacha. Like what you were trying to suggest, what was bothering you, that every Ari can't do work. So we're always going to treat it like the reason why we're saying that it's because it can do damage. That's the reason why you can't sell it, is because as far as the din of malacha, an ari always is going to be treated as if it's broken. But if you have a different wild animal, let's say an ox, or like we'll say later, a donkey, a wild donkey that can do malacha, that would be aser also behemagasa, like Rav said. So we refuted Ravin's kasha on Rav. Meisvei, now we're asking a kasha on Rav. Kishem she'en moichel lahen behema gasa, kacha meichel lahen chaya gasa. Just like you're not allowed to sell a behema gasa, so too you can't sell a behema gasa. Afilu moichel she'moichel lahen behema daka, chaya gasa en moichel lahen. So this is exactly like Rav. We're saying exactly Rav's din. We're saying that it's only like a behema daka, legabi pirchas, but not legabi mechira. It's treated like a chaya gasa is like a behema gasa. Tiyufta Rav Chana bar Rabba Tiyufta. It's taka good kasha. Ravina Rami Mastisana Brisa. Ravina, we had brought the Brisa. This Brisa was a raya to Rav, and we had asked our Mishnah as a raya to Rav Chanan, but then we answered up the raya. Ravina had this whole discussion as a stira between the Mishnah and the Brisa, as a machlokes between the Mishnah and the Brisa. He didn't bring it as a machlokes between Rav Chanan and Rav, but rather he had a stira between the Mishnah and the Brisa. Umashani, and he gave the same answers like we gave for the machlokes between as the rayas between Rav Chanan and Rav. So he asked the Mishnah and the Brisa Umashani. It's not nein Michael and Doiv Vayaris Loichel Davish Yesh by Nezek L'Rav. In time this by Nezek. The reason only because it's damaging. It's can hurt people. Hales benezek moichin. So you see a chaya gasa, you would be allowed to sell, unlike Rav, who says that it's like a behema gasa. For a many kshem shem moichin behema gasa, kachem moichin chaya gasa. Afilu v'makashem moichin behema daka chaya gasa moichin, which is clearly that a chaya gasa is treated like a behema gasa, because we think people are going to mix them up. Umeshani, Bari Shavar Valibid Yehuda. We can answer that the Brisa, the Mishnah is not necessarily chaylik on the Brisa. The Mishnah could be talking about an Ari that has a broken leg. According to Rabbi Yehuda, says that an animal with a broken limb is not also to sell to a guy. Vashi Amistam Ari Shavar. We can answer like Rav Ashi. Maskeflor of Nachman. Man Lemelon. Dari Chayagasihi. Rav Ashi, I'm sorry. Rav Nachman says that this whole raya, that this kasha from the brisa, from our Mishnah to the brisa, he says it's not a raya. He gives us basically a third teretz after that of Abari Shavu or Rav Ashi Stamari. He says, how do you know it's talking about the Ari Chayagasihi? Maybe, how do you know when the Mishnah gives an example that an Ari or a Doiv is Asur because it's a weapon? Maybe it just means to say that any wild animal that's dangerous, you're not allowed to sell. It doesn't mean bedafka a large wild animal that would be Asur anyway. It could be talking about, what are they called? What are those little animals that everyone says are very dangerous? Honey badger, right?
Huh?
Ever heard of a honey badger? There's a little animal called a honey badger. It's like the size of a squirrel, and it fights with lions. You could do like a search for it. There's like a
Sure.
there's a meme. A honey badger don't care. It fights against anything. So maybe it's talking about a honey badger, a little tiny animal that's dangerous, and there's no isser because of behema gasa. It can't certainly would never be mixed up with an ox. So we just gave Ari and Dave as examples of dangerous animals, but we're not meaning to say Dafka a large animal. We just happen those are the most prominent dangerous animals, but we're not specifically talking about large animals. Rav Ashi Dayik Masisun Moisev Tiyufta. Rav Ashi earlier had used our Mishnah. We had asked from our Mishnah that L'chayra, our Mishnah of Chanan had brought as a kasha on Rav, and Rav Ashi was able to answer. He answered that it's a Mishnah assumes that a large animal, a large chaya, is like an animal, a behemoth with a broken limb. He says it's not just a teretz on the kasha from our Mishnah of Rav Chanan on Rav, but it's really a raya to Rav. You can be medayik the Mishnah like Rav. Tnan ein moichelem doiv vayaris loichol davar sheyesh by nezek l'Rav. Time is by nezek. The only reason is because it has nezek. Unless by nezek moichem. The time of the ari. The only it's because ari the stam ari shavru eitzel malacha. Because every ari can't do malacha. Avol mida achrini. We only said an ari because the reason why we had to say an ari because we wanted the only reason for it to be aser is because it's dangerous. But we said an ari because in that so that it won't be aser else it won't be considered a behemoth that can do work because an ari never does work. But something else that could do work would be aser because of the fact that it's similar to behemoth gasa. Tiyufta to Rav Chanan Barava tiyufta. It's taka good kasha on Rav Chanan Barava. So we have two. We have the Brisa, not like Rav Chanan Barava, and Rav Ashi even says our Mishnah is also meduyik, not like Rav and not like Rav Chanan Barava. What kind of work? So that's masha that our Mishnah is saying that a chaye gasa, there are some uncivilized, undomesticated wild animals that can do work. What kind of work they do? Amali Mar Yehuda the Bay Mar Yochni Tachni Rechayim Barudi. You can run a mill using a wild donkey. Amrav Zera. What is it? This is just going to take another minute. Amrav Zera Kavina Bay Rav Yehuda Amalon Gumiramina Ha Milson the Migaver Rabba Shmieli Velo Yadani Miravi Mishmul. I heard this thing from a great man, but I don't know if I heard it from Shmuel. That a large wild animal is treated like a small animal that you have to have an extra spasm to prove that it's alive after the shchita. He said it not b'shem Rab, but rather b'shem Shmuel. He learns this din that from Shmuel. I see that it's not from Rav, it's from Shmuel. I wasn't sure if it was from Rav and Shmuel, but he says it b'shem Shmuel, so it must be Shmuel. He says it b'shem Rav. I mean, Mishmei Rav. It must be. So one Madama has it from Rav, one has it from Shmuel. He said, not from Rav Yirmiyah. I found from Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah that he said b'shmei de Rav Chia, b'shmei de Rav, that this din, and he said I heard from Rav Asi, and he said it b'shem Rav Chama Bar Gurya, b'shmei de Rav. Chazareke b'hema dakla pirchas. Amrilei v'lei saval amar demanda sham bar shmaitza bar Bar Yirmiyah. Don't you know this is from Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah? Amalei pasya uchma. He says you blackened kli. Meaning it's someone who learned a lot. It means it comes from the two of them. That means one said it over b'shem the other. Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah was saying it over for Chama Bar Gurya. Amar Rav, Chayagas arekik behemadaka lepirchus. Okay, we'll stop over here. Have a good Shabbos. I'm going to try
Have a
to
good Shabbos.
start right after Shabbos because I have to take my son like an hour.